The cabin exploded with gunfire. Splinters of wood flew through the air as bullets tore through the walls, and the acrid smell of gunpowder filled the small space. Evangeline Hart pressed her back against the reinforced closet door, her arms wrapped tightly around two small bodies that trembled against her chest. Jackson and Harper, 3 years old, terrified. Outside the closet, she could hear Marcus shouting commands, his voice hoarse with pain and determination. Diana's rifle cracked again and again from somewhere near the window. The thunder of motorcycles surrounded the cabin like a pack of wolves circling wounded prey. How had she gotten here? How had a nobody delivery driver ended up in a fortified cabin in the middle of nowhere holding 2 children who weren't hers? Preparing to die, protecting them from men with guns and badges and the weight of a corrupt system behind them, the answer seemed impossibly far away, lost in the chaos of gunfire and fear. But it had started simply enough. It had started with one last delivery. 72 hours earlier, the evening air hung heavy with the promise of rain as Evangeline checked her phone one last time. The delivery app showed a single package remaining for the night, a small brown box addressed to 1247 Maple Street. She'd never been to that part of town before, and the unfamiliar address made her stomach tighten with unease. Just one more, she told herself, adjusting the rearview mirror of her beat-up Honda Civic. The dashboard clock read 9:47. Her shoulders ached from a long day of lifting packages, and her feet burned inside her worn sneakers. One more delivery, then she could go home to her empty apartment and her microwave dinner and the crushing silence that had become her only companion. Evangeline pulled up the map on her phone, squinting at the blue line that would guide her to her final destination. The route led away from the busy main streets she knew well, winding into a quieter residential area where the streetlights seemed fewer and farther between. As she drove, the familiar sounds of the city faded away. Here, the houses sat further apart, their windows dark except for the occasional porch light. Tall oak trees lined the street, their branches casting strange shadows in her headlights that seemed to reach for her car like grasping fingers. She'd been doing this for 2 years now. 2 years of driving around strange neighborhoods, leaving packages on doorsteps, collecting barely enough money to survive. 2 years of telling herself this was temporary, that she'd find something better, that her life would eventually amount to more than this endless cycle of work and loneliness. But who was she kidding? At 25, with no college degree, no family, no connections, and a childhood spent bouncing between foster homes that had taught her to trust no one and expect nothing. This was probably as good as it got. The houses grew more spaced out, the streetlights became sparse. Evangeline's hands tightened on the steering wheel as she scanned the mailboxes for numbers. The streets were empty. No cars, no pedestrians, not even a stray cat. Just darkness and silence, and the feeling of eyes watching from behind curtained windows. Then she saw it, something dark on the sidewalk ahead. At first she thought it might be a garbage bag someone had left out, but as her headlights swept across it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a person, a large person lying motionless on the ground. Every instinct Evangeline had developed over 25 years of survival screamed at her to keep driving. She'd seen enough crime shows to know better than to stop. She'd learned in foster care to keep her head down. Mind her own business, don't get involved, because getting involved only brought pain. Her foot hovered over the gas pedal. But then she saw something else. Something that made her stomach lurch. Blood, dark and wet on the concrete, visible even in the dim light. And movement, small movement beside the fallen figure. "Oh God," Evangeline whispered. Her hands trembled as she pulled over to the curb. Through the windshield she could see the scene more clearly now. A man in a leather jacket sprawled on his side, the unmistakable patches of a motorcycle club visible on his back even in the darkness. And there, pressed against his chest, 2 small children. Evangeline's hand moved to her phone, fingers shaking as she pulled up the emergency dial screen. But before she could press the numbers, she heard it. A sound that cut through the night and straight into her heart. A whimper, the frightened cry of a child. She opened her car door, the The cool night air hit her face as she stepped out onto the sidewalk, her legs unsteady beneath her. Every rational thought told her to get back in the car, make the call, and drive away. Let the professionals handle it. Don't get involved. But her feet carried her forward anyway. The man was huge. Even lying wounded on the ground, he looked powerful, dangerous. His leather jacket was adorned with patches and symbols she recognized from news reports. Hell's Angels, the motorcycle club that controlled half the drug trade in the region. But what made Evangeline's heart stop wasn't his appearance, or even the blood seeping through his shirt. It was what he held against his chest with arms that somehow remained strong despite his obvious wounds. 2 children, twins by the look of them, no more than 3 years old. A boy and a girl with matching blonde curls and wide, terrified eyes that locked onto Evangeline's face the moment she knelt beside them. The children were eerily quiet now, as if they'd cried themselves out or learned that making noise only brought danger. They clung to the man's jacket with tiny fists, their small bodies pressed as close to him as they could get. "Hello, 911, what's your emergency?" The voice crackled through her phone speaker. "I need help right away," Evangeline said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded when everything inside her was shaking. "I'm on Maple Street near house number 1247. There's a man who's been shot and he has 2 small children with him. Please hurry." The operator's voice began asking questions, requesting details, but Evangeline's attention was fixed on the scene before her. The man's eyes flickered open, focusing on her face with surprising intensity despite his obvious pain. Blood had soaked through his shirt and spread across the concrete beneath him in a dark pool that seemed to grow even as she watched. But still he kept his arms wrapped protectively around the children, as if shielding them with his body even as his life drained away. For a moment their eyes met. His were dark, almost black in the dim light, but filled with something Evangeline recognized because she'd felt it herself 1,000 times in 1,000 different foster homes. Desperation. "Please," the man whispered. His voice was barely audible, forced out through obvious pain. "Please don't let them take my kids." Evangeline leaned closer, her hand instinctively reaching out to touch the little girl's head. The child's hair was soft under her fingers and the small body trembled like a frightened bird. "The ambulance is coming," Evangeline said. "You're going to be okay." But even as she said it, she could see the blood, could see how much there was, could see the way his face had gone pale and waxy under the streetlight. The man's hand shot out with surprising speed, his fingers wrapping around Evangeline's wrist with desperate strength. His grip was cold, his skin clammy with shock, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. "Not the ambulance," he gasped. "The kids. Don't let them go into the system. The system." The words hit Evangeline like a physical blow. She knew the system. She'd been raised by the system. She knew the cold, institutional walls, the temporary homes, the feeling of being a burden that nobody really wanted. "I don't understand," Evangeline said. Though part of her did understand, part of her understood too well. The man's grip tightened. "There's a recorder," he whispered. His voice was getting weaker, the words coming slower. "Hidden in my son's teddy bear. Everything's on it. Everything they did. They'll kill my kids for it if they find them." Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street, growing brighter as the ambulance approached. The sound of sirens cut through the night. "Please," the man said again. His eyes were starting to lose focus, but they remained locked on Evangeline's face. "Take care of them. Don't let the system have them. Promise me." Evangeline looked down at the children. The little boy stared up at her with eyes that seemed far too old for his age. The little girl had her thumb in her mouth, her free hand clutching her brother's shirt. They were so small, so vulnerable, so utterly dependent on the adults around them to keep them safe. And this man, this dying stranger, was asking her to be that adult. "I promise," Evangeline heard herself say. The words came out before she could think them through, before she could consider what they meant or what they would cost. "I'll keep them safe." The man's eyes softened with relief. "Jackson," he whispered, nodding toward the boy, "Harper." He looked at the little girl. His voice grew fainter with each word. "They're good kids, so good, like their mother." Jackson and Harper Evangeline repeated softly, committing the names to memory. "I promise. I won't let anything happen to them." The ambulance pulled up its flashing lights, painting everything in alternating shades of red and blue. Paramedics rushed out, their movements quick and practiced as they assessed the situation. "Multiple gunshot wounds," one paramedic called out. "Blood pressure's dropping. We need to move now." They gently but firmly moved Evangeline aside, their hands working with efficient precision as they began treating the man's wounds. Evangeline stood with the children now, her arms instinctively wrapping around their small bodies as they watched the paramedics work. Harper whimpered silly, and Jackson's small hand found Evangeline's, his fingers wrapping around hers with surprising strength. "Ma'am," one of the paramedics approached her, his voice calm but urgent. "Are you related to the victim?" Evangeline's mind raced. She looked down at the twins, felt their small bodies pressed against her legs, felt the weight of the promise she'd just made. "The children are with me," she said. The lie came easier than she'd expected. "I'm watching them." The paramedic nodded, already turning back to his patient. "We're taking him to Memorial, critical condition." He glanced at the kids. "You'll need to follow up with the police. They'll want a statement." The ambulance doors slammed shut and the vehicle sped away, sirens wailing into the night. Evangeline stood on the sidewalk with two children who weren't hers, watching the red lights disappear around a corner. The street fell silent again. The houses remained dark. No curious neighbors appeared. Evangeline looked down at Jackson and Harper. They stared up at her with identical expressions of fear and confusion and desperate hope. "Okay," she said softly. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "Okay, let's get you somewhere safe." She guided them to her car, helped them into the back seat. They sat close together, Jackson's arm protectively around his sister's shoulders. As Evangeline buckled them in, she noticed for the first time what the boy was holding. A teddy bear, brown and worn, obviously well loved. The recorder. Evangeline's hands shook as she started the car. She had no plan, no idea what she was doing. No clue how to take care of two traumatized toddlers or what to do with evidence that could apparently get them all killed. All she had was a promise made to a dying man on a dark street. And Evangeline Hart knew with absolute certainty that promises were the one thing she'd never learned how to break. The drive back to her apartment took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Evangeline kept glancing in the rearview mirror, checking on the children. They sat in complete silence, their small faces pale in the passing streetlights. Harper had her thumb back in her mouth. Jackson stared out the window, the teddy bear clutched tight against his chest. Her apartment building came into view, a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a flickering security light that had been broken for 6 months. She parked in her usual spot and turned to face the children. "Okay," she said, trying to keep her voice gentle. "We're here. This is where I live. It's not much, but it's safe." Jackson looked at her. "Where's our daddy?" he asked. His voice was small but steady. The question hit Evangeline like a punch to the gut. "He's at the hospital," she said. "The doctors are helping him. Is he going to die?" Harper asked, her voice even smaller than her brother's. Evangeline wanted to lie, wanted to promise them everything would be fine, but she'd grown up with lies and broken promises. She couldn't start this, whatever this was, with a lie. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said. "But he wanted me to keep you safe, and that's what I'm going to do." She helped them out of the car and up the stairs to her second-floor apartment. Jackson and Harper stood just inside the door, holding hands, their eyes taking in the unfamiliar space with obvious apprehension. "Are you hungry?" Evangeline asked. It was past 10 now, and she had no idea when they'd last eaten. Both children nodded. Evangeline opened her refrigerator, mentally cataloging its pathetic contents. Half a gallon of milk, some bread, cheese, eggs. She could work with this. "How about grilled cheese sandwiches?" she suggested. "And milk." Another pair of nods. She set about making the sandwiches, hyper-aware of the children's eyes following her every movement. They'd settled on her worn couch, sitting close together, the teddy bear between them. The sandwiches were done. She cut them into triangles and brought them to the coffee table with 2 cups of milk. Jackson and Harper ate slowly, mechanically, as if their bodies knew they needed food, but their minds were too overwhelmed to register taste. When they finished, Harper's eyes were drooping. Jackson was fighting sleep, his head bobbing. "You need to sleep," Evangeline said softly. "Let me find you somewhere comfortable." She grabbed her softest blankets from the closet and made a nest on the couch, piling pillows to make it as comfortable as possible. Jackson and Harper curled up together without being told, fitting their small bodies into the space like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Evangeline pulled the blanket over them, tucking it around their shoulders. "Will you stay?" Harper whispered. Her blue eyes were huge in her small face. "Please don't leave us." The words struck something deep in Evangeline's chest. How many times had she whispered those same words as a child? "I'm not going anywhere," Evangeline said. She pulled a chair close to the couch. "I'll be right here, I promise." Jackson was already asleep, his breathing deep and even. Harper's eyes closed, then opened, then closed again, fighting the exhaustion pulling her under. "Sing," Harper whispered. "Daddy always sings." Evangeline's throat tightened. She couldn't remember anyone ever singing to her as a child. She didn't know any lullabies, but she opened her mouth and began to hum something, some half-remembered melody from somewhere she couldn't quite place. It didn't matter that it wasn't a proper lullaby. Harper's breathing evened out, and within moments both children were deeply asleep. Evangeline sat in the chair watching them. In sleep they looked so peaceful, so innocent. What had she done? What had she promised? She was nobody. A delivery driver who could barely take care of herself. She had no experience with children, no support system, no plan. And yet, looking at Jackson and Harper sleeping on her couch, their small hands clasped together even in sleep, Evangeline felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She finally stood careful not to wake them and retrieved the teddy bear. Her fingers explored its worn fabric, searching for any sign of a hidden compartment. There, along the back seam, a small opening, inside a tiny digital recorder. Evangeline took it to her bedroom and closed the door. She sat on her bed, the recorder in her trembling hands, and pressed play. A man's voice filled the room, calm, methodical. "My name is Marcus Dalton. If you're hearing this, I'm probably dead. And if my kids are with you, then you're probably the person who found me that night. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for keeping your promise." Evangeline's breath caught. He'd known. Somehow he'd known she would stop. The recording continued. "I was a Marine, served in the Gulf War, got out, tried to build a normal life, met Isabella. We had twins. Life was good." A pause. Static crackling. "Isabella died 2 years ago. Car accident. I couldn't handle it. Joined the Hells Angels, thought I'd found a new brotherhood. But it wasn't brotherhood. It was evil dressed up in leather and lies." Marcus's voice grew harder. "They traffic drugs. They traffic people. They've got cops on their payroll, politicians in their pocket. They're destroying this city one deal at a time." Evangeline's hands tightened around the recorder. I couldn't be part of it anymore. Couldn't look my kids in the eye and pretend I was a good man while I helped monsters do monstrous things. So I started gathering evidence. Recordings, photos, documents, everything I could find. And I contacted the FBI. Agent Victoria Mitchell. She promised me protection if I testified. Another pause. Longer this time. But the club found out. Their sergeant, a man we call Brick, he's dirty FBI himself, been feeding information to the club for years. When he heard I was talking to the feds, he put a hit out on me. Static. The sound of papers rustling. I knew they'd come for me eventually. I tried to be careful, tried to keep Jackson and Harper safe, but tonight I made a mistake. I had to meet with Agent Mitchell one last time to hand over the last piece of evidence. I thought I could do it quick, thought I could bring the kids with me and keep them close. But Brick's men found us. The recording grew scratchy. If you're hearing this, they probably got me. But they didn't get my kids. They didn't get the evidence. There's more. Physical evidence. Photos, documents. Hidden in my house at 847 Riverside Drive. In the basement under the workbench, there's a floor safe. Combination is Isabella's birthday, 031786. Evangeline scrambled for a pen, writing down the address and combination on her palm. The evidence is enough to bring down the whole operation. Brick, the other dirty cops, the politicians, all of them. But you have to get it to Agent Mitchell. She's clean, one of the only ones left. A long silence. Then Marcus's voice came back softer now. To whoever's taking care of my kids, thank you. I know what I'm asking is impossible. I know it's dangerous, but please keep them safe. Jackson and Harper. They're everything good left in this world. They're the reason I'm doing this, the reason I tried to make things right. Tell them their daddy loved them more than anything. Tell them I'm sorry I couldn't be there to watch them grow up. Tell them to be brave, to be kind, to be better than I was. Another pause. The sound of children laughing in the background. And please don't let them go into the system. I grew up in foster care. It nearly destroyed me. I can't let that happen to them. They deserve better. They deserve a real home, real love. The recording clicked off. Evangeline sat in the darkness of her bedroom, tears streaming down her face. She'd cried maybe twice since turning 18, but now they came freely for a man she'd never really met, for children, who'd lost everything for a promise that felt impossibly heavy. She understood now, understood why he'd looked at her with such desperation, understood why he'd trusted her with his most precious treasures, because he'd been where they were. He knew what it meant to grow up in the system, to be nobody's child, to float through life without roots or connections. And he'd recognized something in Evangeline's face that night on the street. Had seen another survivor, another person who knew what it meant to be alone. She wiped her eyes and looked at her reflection in the dark window. A tired woman stared back, too thin with shadows under her eyes and the weary expression of someone who'd learned not to expect much from life. But maybe that woman could become something more. Maybe that woman could keep a promise that mattered. Evangeline stood and walked back to the living room. Jackson and Harper were still sleeping, their faces peaceful in the soft glow of the lamp she'd left on. She settled back into the chair, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. Tomorrow she'd figure out what to do. Tomorrow she'd make a plan. Tomorrow she'd start trying to be the person Marcus Dalton had believed she could be. But tonight she would keep watch. She would stay awake while they slept. She would be the guardian standing between them and whatever darkness might come. Because that's what you did when you made a promise to a dying man. That's what you did when two small children looked at you with hope in their eyes. That's what you did when you finally, after 25 years of drifting alone, found a reason to fight. Evangeline woke with a start, her neck stiff from sleeping upright. Pale morning light filtered through the thin curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was, forgot why she was sleeping in a chair. Then she heard it, a small whimper from the couch. Everything came rushing back. Marcus, the twins, the promise, the recorder. Harper was crying softly, her small body curled into a tight ball. Jackson sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his young face creased with worry. Evangeline moved to the couch. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling beside them. "It's okay. You're safe." Harper's blue eyes opened, swimming with tears. "I want my daddy," she whispered. The question cut through Evangeline like broken glass. She had no good answer, no way to make this better. "Your daddy is in the hospital," Evangeline said gently. "The doctors are taking care of him." "Is he coming back?" Jackson asked. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the teddy bear. "I don't know, sweetheart, but he wanted me to take care of you until he does." Harper's crying intensified. Jackson pulled his sister closer. his small arms trying to protect her from pain that couldn't be stopped with hugs. Evangeline felt helpless. What did she know about comforting children, but these children needed her now. They needed her to be strong, to be capable, to be someone she'd never been before. "Are you hungry?" Evangeline asked. It was the only thing she could think to offer. Both children nodded, though Harper's tears didn't stop. Evangeline went to the kitchen and opened cabinets that seemed even more bare in the morning light. Cereal. She had generic brand cereal and the milk from last night. She poured 2 bowls and brought them to the coffee table. Jackson and Harper ate mechanically, like their bodies knew they needed fuel, but their minds were somewhere else entirely. As they ate, Evangeline checked her phone. 7 missed calls from the delivery company. 3 text messages asking where she was, why she hadn't logged in. She stared at the messages. Work. The normal world still existed out there. Still expected her to show up and deliver packages and pretend everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. Everything had changed the moment she'd stopped on that dark street. She typed out a quick message: family emergency. Need a few days off. Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. Can't give you time off without 2 weeks' notice. Company policy. Evangeline stared at the message, anger rising in her chest. She'd worked for this company for 2 years, never missed a day, never complained, and now when she needed help, they quoted policy at her. "Then I quit," she typed back, effective immediately. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. "Okay," she said aloud. "New plan." Jackson looked up from his cereal. "What plan?" "We need to get you some things," she said. "Clothes, toothbrushes, everything you need." "Our clothes are at home," Jackson said. "Can we go home?" Evangeline's heart sank. How could she explain that home wasn't safe anymore? "Not right now," she said carefully. "Right now we need to stay here where it's safe. But we'll get you new things, whatever you need." She looked at her wallet. $63. Her last paycheck wasn't due until Friday, which now would never come. She had maybe $200 in her checking account. The morning passed in a blur. Evangeline dressed the twins in their clothes from yesterday, blood-stained and dirty as they were. Then she loaded them back into her car, checking the street carefully before leaving the building. Every car that passed made her nervous. Every person who glanced their way made her heart race. She'd never been paranoid before, but Marcus's words echoed in her mind. "They'll kill my kids for it if they find them." The discount store was busy with early morning shoppers. Evangeline held Jackson and Harper's hands tightly as they walked through the sliding doors, hyper-aware of everyone around them. She grabbed a cart and started gathering essentials. Clothes for both kids sized for age 3. Underwear, socks, pajamas, toothbrushes, child toothpaste, a hairbrush, soap. In the toy section, Harper's eyes locked onto a purple stuffed bunny. She didn't ask for it. Didn't reach for it, just stared at it with longing that broke Evangeline's heart. "You want the bunny?" Evangeline asked. Harper nodded, her expression uncertain. Evangeline put it in the cart. Jackson was looking at a set of toy cars with the same careful want. "Those too," Evangeline said. At the food section, she loaded up on things kids would eat. Mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, apple juice, bananas, peanut butter, and jelly. The cashier was an older woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a bun. "Someone's got their hands full," she said with a smile. "They're staying with me," Evangeline said, "for a while." The cashier smiled warmly. "Well, aren't they lucky? Your total is $147.63. Evangeline's stomach dropped. She pulled out her debit card, praying the transaction would go through. Approved. Back at the apartment, Evangeline helped them change into clean clothes. Harper clutched her purple bunny. Jackson had one of the toy cars in his hand. Evangeline was just thinking that maybe they'd gotten through the worst of it when she saw the envelope. It had been slipped under her door while they were out. White, plain, her name written in block letters on the front. Her blood went cold. She made sure the children were occupied before picking up the envelope. The note inside was short, typed, impersonal. "We know where you are. Bring the kids to us or things will get much worse. You have 48 hours. Evangeline's legs went weak. She sank onto a kitchen chair. They'd found her. Already. Less than 12 hours her car, it had been at the scene. Someone must have gotten her license plate. She was so stupid, so unprepared for this. Evangeline looked at Jackson and Harper playing on the floor. They'd lined up the toy cars in a neat row, and Harper was making her bunny hop from car to car. She couldn't let anything happen to them. Evangeline pulled out her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I received a threatening note, Evangeline said. Someone threatening to hurt children in my care. The operator took her information, asked questions, promised to send a police officer. But even as Evangeline answered, she remembered Marcus's words, bricks, dirty FBI, cops on their payroll. What if the police who came were part of it? Actually, Evangeline said, I'm sorry, false alarm. My neighbor was just playing a prank. Sorry to waste your time. She hung up before the operator could respond. For a long moment, she just sat there, her mind racing through options that all seemed impossible. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. Evangeline stared at it, debating whether to answer. It rang 4 times before she finally pressed accept. Hello, is this Evangeline Hart? A woman's voice, hard, cautious. Who is this? My name is Diana Kincaid. I'm a friend of Marcus Dalton. Evangeline's grip tightened on the phone. How did you get my number? Marcus gave it to me, before, in case something went wrong. A pause. I'm guessing something went wrong. He's in the hospital, Evangeline said carefully. Critical condition. And you have his kids. It wasn't a question. We need to meet, Diana said. You're in danger. Those kids are in danger and you have no idea what you're dealing with. How do I know you're not one of them? You don't, Diana said simply. But Marcus trusted me, and right now I'm the only person who can help you. Evangeline looked at the threatening note on the table. 48 hours. Where? She asked. Diana gave her an address. A diner on the south side of town. 1 hour. Come alone, but bring the kids. They need to see a familiar face. The line went dead. Evangeline sat for a long moment, trying to think clearly through the fear. Meeting this Diana woman could be a trap, but staying here definitely was. She had to take the chance. Jackson Harper, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. We're going for a ride. The diner was called Betty's, a 1950s-style place with red vinyl booths and chrome accents. Evangeline parked across the street, studying the building carefully before getting out. It was late afternoon now. Only a few customers sat scattered throughout the diner. Evangeline spotted the woman immediately. She sat alone in a corner booth, her back to the wall, positioned so she could see both the entrance and the rear exit. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore a leather jacket. Her arms bore tattoos that looked military. Diana Kincaid looked like someone who'd been in fights and won them. Evangeline held Jackson and Harper's hands as they entered. The moment Diana saw the children, her expression softened. Jackson, Harper. Diana's voice was gentle. You remember me? Jackson studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. You came to our house. You and Daddy talked. That's right. Diana gestured to the booth. Why don't you all sit down? Diana ordered them food without asking. Chicken fingers and fries for the kids, coffee for the adults. When the waitress left, Diana turned her attention to Evangeline. Thank you, she said simply, for stopping, for helping them. Who are you? Evangeline asked. Really? Former Marine, served with Marcus in the Gulf. When we both got out, we lost touch for a while. Then a few years ago, I made some bad choices, joined the Hells Angels thinking it was Brotherhood. Diana's jaw tightened. I was wrong. But you're still with them. Was, until Marcus told me what he was planning. He was collecting evidence to bring them down. I decided to help him. Why? Diana's eyes went distant. My sister was 22 when she died. Overdosed on drugs that the club pushed into this city. I watched her destroy herself and I knew it was wrong. Knew the club wasn't Brotherhood. It was poison. The food arrived. Jackson and Harper ate slowly, watching Diana with cautious recognition. Marcus told you about the evidence? Diana asked quietly. Evangeline nodded. The recorder. And he said there's more. At his house. Diana's expression darkened. That house is being watched. Brick the club's sergeant, he's got people on it 24/7. They're waiting for someone to show up looking for that evidence. Brick, Evangeline repeated. Marcus said he was FBI. He went dirty years ago. Now he feeds information to the club, warns them about raids, makes evidence disappear. He's got half the police department in his pocket. Diana leaned forward. The evidence Marcus gathered, it's not just about the club. It's about dirty cops, corrupt politicians, the whole rotten system. Evangeline felt the weight of it settling over her. Then what do we do if the police are corrupt, if we can't trust anyone? There's one person we can trust, Agent Victoria Mitchell, FBI but not local. She's out of the regional office. Marcus was working with her. And you think she can help? I think she's our only shot. Diana glanced at the children. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. Your apartment isn't secure anymore. They left a note, Evangeline said. They know where I live. Diana wasn't surprised. Marcus's car was at the scene. They probably ran the plates of every vehicle in the area, found your registration, your address. So where can we go? I know a place, an old friend of Marcus's, woman named Marge Sullivan. She lives outside the city, has a farmhouse with some land. She owes Marcus a favor and she's got no connections to the club. Evangeline wanted to trust her, but trust didn't come easily. How do I know you're telling the truth? Evangeline asked. Diana met her eyes steadily. You don't. All you have is Marcus's word that he trusted me, and the fact that if I wanted to hurt these kids, I could have done it a dozen different ways by now. Jackson spoke up suddenly. Daddy said Diana was good people. He said she was trying to help. Both women looked at the boy. He stared back at them, old beyond his years. Daddy said you'd keep us safe, Jackson said to Evangeline, and he said Diana would help. He looked at Diana. So I think we should trust her. Out of the mouths of babes. Okay, Evangeline said. We'll go to this Marge's place. But if anything seems wrong, you run, Diana finished. And you don't look back. Smart. They left the diner as the sun was setting. Diana followed in her own vehicle, a battered pickup truck. The drive took almost an hour, leading them out of the city and into countryside that grew progressively more rural. Farmland stretched in all directions. Finally, Diana's truck turned onto a gravel drive. At the end sat a two-story farmhouse, white with blue shutters surrounded by tall oak trees. Lights glowed warm in the windows and smoke drifted from the chimney. An older woman appeared on the porch. She was perhaps 68, with silver hair and a face that spoke of kindness and strength. She wore an apron over jeans and a flannel shirt. Diana, the woman called out, and these must be Marcus's babies. Marge Sullivan came down the porch steps. She knelt in front of Jackson and Harper, her eyes soft with compassion. Your daddy and I were friends a long time ago, Marge said gently. He helped me when I needed it, and now I'm going to help you. Is that okay? Harper, who'd been silent most of the day, suddenly burst into tears. Not quiet tears this time, but great racking sobs. Marge gathered the little girl into her arms without hesitation. Jackson pressed against Evangeline's leg and she rested her hand on his shoulder, feeling him tremble. They'd been so brave all day, but standing here in the twilight with a grandmother figure offering comfort, something in both children broke. Come inside, Marge said. All of you. You're safe here. The farmhouse was warm, cozy, filled with the smell of something baking and comfortable clutter. Marge settled the children on a couch with blankets and cookies while she talked quietly with Diana and Evangeline in the kitchen. Marcus called me 2 days ago. Marge said, her voice low. Told me he might be in trouble. Asked if I'd help if something went wrong. Her eyes filled with tears. I told him, of course. He saved my son's life in Iraq. Carried him 3 miles under fire to get him medical attention. I owe Marcus everything. We can't stay long, Diana said. It's not fair to put you in danger. Nonsense, Marge said firmly. You'll stay as long as you need. I've got plenty of room, plenty of food, and a shotgun I know how to use. Evangeline felt something loosen in her chest. For the first time since that night on the dark street, she felt like maybe they weren't completely alone. Thank you, she said softly. Marge patted her hand. You're doing a brave thing taking care of those babies. Marcus chose well when he trusted you. That night, Evangeline helped Jackson and Harper get ready for bed in a room Marge had prepared. It had 2 twin beds with quilts that looked handmade. As she tucked them in, Harper reached up and wrapped her small arms around Evangeline's neck. I love you, Miss Eva, the little girl whispered. The words hit Evangeline like a physical force. No one had said those words to her in years. I love you too, sweetie, Evangeline whispered back and found that she meant it. Jackson was already half asleep, the teddy bear clutched to his chest. Evangeline smoothed his hair back from his forehead. Yesterday, she'd been nobody, alone, purposeless. Today, she was someone these children depended on, someone they trusted, someone they loved. It was terrifying, but it was also exactly what she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it. Downstairs, Diana and Marge were still talking. Evangeline joined them, accepting a cup of tea. Marcus is stable, Diana said, looking at her phone. Got word from a nurse I know. Still critical, but he made it through surgery. They think he'll live. Relief washed through Evangeline. Can we see him? Not yet. Hospital's being watched. Brick will have people there. Diana set her phone down. But once he's conscious, once he can talk, we can coordinate with Agent Mitchell. Get the rest of the evidence. Build the case. And then what? Evangeline asked. Even if we bring them down, what happens to Jackson and Harper? The question hung in the air. Social services, probably, Marge said gently. Unless Marcus has family. He doesn't, Diana said. He grew up in foster care like you, she said to Evangeline. No family, and Isabella's parents are dead. There's no one. Evangeline felt something fierce rise in her chest. They're not going into the system. I promised Marcus. You're not their legal guardian, Diana pointed out gently. You have no legal right to them. I don't care about legal rights, Evangeline said. I care about keeping them safe. I care about keeping my promise. Marge smiled. Spoken like a true mother. The word stopped Evangeline cold. Mother. Was that what she was becoming? She thought of Harper's arms around her neck, Jackson's small hand in hers. Yes, that's exactly what she wanted to be. We'll figure it out, Diana said. One step at a time. First we keep them safe. Then we get justice for Marcus. Then we worry about the rest. It was late when Evangeline finally went to bed, but she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept racing through everything that had happened, everything that could still go wrong. She thought about Marcus fighting for his life. She thought about Brick and whoever else was out there. She thought about evidence hidden in a house she couldn't access. The odds felt overwhelming, but then Evangeline thought about the promise she'd made. The absolute certainty in Marcus's eyes. The weight of Jackson and Harper's trust. She'd spent 25 years drifting through life without purpose or meaning. Maybe that was about to change. Maybe for the first time in her life, Evangeline Hart was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Keeping a promise. Protecting the innocent. Being someone worth trusting. Tomorrow they'd figure out the next step. Tomorrow they'd plan. But tonight Evangeline would rest, would gather her strength, would prepare herself for the battle ahead. Because this was no longer just about keeping a promise to a dying man. This was about becoming the person those children believed she already was. And that was the most important promise of all. The morning came too quickly. Evangeline had dozed fitfully, waking every hour to check her phone to listen for sounds that didn't belong. At 6, she gave up on sleep and went downstairs. Marge was already in the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the warm space. "Couldn't sleep either?" the older woman asked, pouring Evangeline a cup. "Too much to think about." Marge nodded. Marcus used to get that look. Before a mission, that focus, that determination. "I'm not a soldier," Evangeline said. "Neither was any soldier before their first battle," Marge replied. "But you showed up anyway. That's what matters." Diana appeared in the doorway. "We need to talk. About next steps." They sat at the kitchen table. Diana spread out a hand-drawn map of Marcus's neighborhood, marking streets with precision. "The house is being watched," Diana said. "Front and back. Brick's got at least 2 men on it. They're waiting for someone to show up." "So how do we get it?" Evangeline asked. "We don't. Not yet." Diana looked up. "First, we need to talk to Agent Mitchell. Coordinate with her. Make sure when we do make a move, we have federal protection ready." "And how do we contact her without tipping off Brick?" "Carefully." Diana pulled out a burner phone. "Marcus gave me her number. Said to use it only in emergencies. I'd say this qualifies." She dialed, putting the phone on speaker. It rang 3 times. "Mitchell?" "Agent Mitchell, my name is Diana Kincaid. I'm a friend of Marcus Dalton." A pause. "Is he alive?" "Yes, barely. He's in Memorial Hospital, critical condition. And the evidence, safe for now. But we need to meet. There are complications." Another pause. "Where are you?" Diana glanced at Marge, who nodded. "Farmhouse outside the city, Sullivan property on Route 47. "I know it. I'll be there in 2 hours. Come alone. If Brick's people are watching me, I don't want to lead them to you." The line went dead. Evangeline felt her stomach tighten. What if she's compromised? What if she tells Brick where we are? "Then we run," Diana said simply. But Marcus trusted her. That's got to count for something. The 2 hours crawled by. Evangeline checked on Jackson and Harper, who were still sleeping. She watched from the window as the sun climbed higher. At 8:15, a black sedan turned onto the gravel drive. Diana tensed her hand, moving to something under her jacket. A gun. The car stopped and a woman got out. She was in her early 50s with dark hair streaked with gray. She wore a simple pantsuit and carried herself with confidence. Agent Victoria Mitchell. Marge opened the door as Mitchell approached. "Coffee?" Marge offered. "Please," Mitchell said, stepping inside. Her eyes swept the room with practiced efficiency. They landed on Evangeline. "You're the delivery driver, the one who found Marcus?" "Evangeline Hart." "Marcus told me about you," Mitchell said. "Said if anything happened to him, you'd be the one protecting his kids. I wasn't sure I believed him. Seemed like a lot to ask of a stranger." "He didn't really give me a choice," Evangeline said. "He gave you every choice. You chose to stop. You chose to help. You chose to keep your promise." Mitchell accepted coffee and sat. "Now I need to know what we're dealing with. What evidence do you have?" Diana nodded to Evangeline, who pulled out the recorder. "Marcus recorded himself explaining everything. The club's operations, the dirty cops, the politicians, and he said there's more. Physical evidence, hidden in his house." Mitchell's expression darkened. "That house is compromised. Brick's got it under surveillance." "We know," Diana said. "That's why we need your help." Mitchell was quiet, her fingers drumming on the table. "This is bigger than you know. Brick isn't just one dirty agent. He's the linchpin in a network that goes all the way up. State politicians, federal judges. If Marcus's evidence is as good as he claimed, it could bring down dozens of people." "Can you protect us?" Evangeline asked. "Can you keep the children safe?" Mitchell met her eyes. "I can try, but I won't lie to you, Miss Hart. These are dangerous people with unlimited resources. The best I can offer is witness protection, new identities, relocation. But even that's not guaranteed." "Marcus promised his kids would be safe," Evangeline said. "I promised I'd keep them safe. So we're going to need you to keep your promises too." Something shifted in Mitchell's expression. "Respect. Fair enough. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get a team together, clean agents. We're going to raid that house, get the evidence, and take down everyone involved. When? Diana asked. 48 hours. I need time to coordinate to make sure everyone can be arrested simultaneously. If we move too soon, if anyone runs, we lose them forever. Evangeline thought about the note, the threat, 48 hours. They gave us a deadline, she said. Said we had 2 days to hand over the kids. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Then we're racing against the clock. You stay here. Keep the kids hidden. Don't contact anyone. In 2 days, this will all be over. It sounded too simple, but what choice did they have? Mitchell stood to leave, but paused at the door. Marcus talked about you constantly, Miss Hart. Said you reminded him of himself. Someone who'd been knocked down by life but kept getting back up. He was right to trust you. After Mitchell left, the farmhouse fell into uneasy quiet. Diana set up a watch rotation. Marge went about her routine with calm, and Evangeline tried to be normal for Jackson and Harper. She made them lunch, peanut butter and jelly cut into triangles. She sat with them while they ate, trying to smile. Miss Eva, Jackson said, is our daddy going to die? The question hit her like a physical blow. She wanted to lie. I don't know, sweetheart, she said honestly. He's very sick, but the doctors are doing everything they can. If he dies, Jackson continued, will you still take care of us? Evangeline's throat tightened. Yes, always, I promise. Harper, who'd been quiet, suddenly climbed into Evangeline's lap. You're our mommy now, she said simply. The words settled over Evangeline like a weight and a gift simultaneously. She wrapped her arms around both children. Yes, she whispered, I'm your mommy now. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, the first time she'd claimed the role, and saying it made it real. That afternoon, while the children napped, Diana pulled Evangeline aside. We need to talk about what happens after, Diana said. After we get the evidence, after Brick's arrested, what happens to you and the kids? Evangeline hadn't let herself think that far ahead. I don't know. Marcus is their father. If he lives, he'll be in witness protection, new identity, new life. He can't come back here. The reality struck Evangeline. Even if Marcus survived, nothing would go back to the way it was. The kids can't go into foster care, Evangeline said firmly. Then you need to be prepared to fight for them, legally. Lawyers, custody hearings, home studies. Proving you can take care of them long term. I can barely take care of myself, Evangeline said. I just quit my job. I have maybe $100. What judge would give me custody? One who sees what I see, Diana said. A woman who risked everything for children who weren't hers. That counts for something. Evangeline wanted to believe her, but she'd seen how the system worked. I'll figure it out, Evangeline said, though she had no idea how. That night, after putting Jackson and Harper to bed, Evangeline stood in the doorway of their room, watching them sleep. Harper had her purple bunny. Jackson's arm was flung over his head, the teddy bear tucked under his other arm. They'd been through so much. Lost their mother, watched their father get shot, been uprooted from everything familiar, and yet they still managed to smile, to trust, to love. They're resilient, Marge said softly, appearing beside Evangeline. Kids usually are, but they need someone to be strong for them too. I'm not strong, Evangeline admitted. I'm terrified. That's what being a parent is, Marge said with a small smile. Being terrified and doing it anyway. Loving someone so much that their needs come before your fear. What if I fail them? What if you don't? Marge countered. You've already succeeded more than you know. You showed up. You stayed. You kept your promise. Evangeline thought about her own childhood, the foster homes, the social workers, the feeling of never belonging. She wouldn't let Jackson and Harper feel that way. Whatever it took, she would make sure they knew they were wanted, loved, home. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Diana's phone rang at dawn. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. Marcus is awake, she said, and he's asking for his kids. Evangeline's heart leaped. That's good, right? It means he's conscious, but the hospital's still being watched. If we show up with Jackson and Harper bricks, people will know exactly where they are. But we can't not tell them their father's awake, Evangeline said. They gathered at the kitchen table trying to work out a plan. Mitchell was unreachable. They were on their own. I'll go, Diana said finally. I'll see Marcus, let him know the kids are safe. I'm coming with you, Evangeline said. Too dangerous. He trusted me with his children. I need to tell him they're okay. I need to see him. Diana studied her, then nodded. Okay, but we do this smart. Marge, you stay with the kids. If you don't hear from us in 4 hours, call Mitchell and run. Marge's face was grim, but she nodded. Be careful. The drive to the hospital took 90 minutes. Evangeline spent the entire time checking mirrors, watching for cars that followed too long. Memorial Hospital was a massive complex. Diana parked in the visitor lot, and they studied the building. There, Diana said, pointing. 3rd floor window, black sedan with 2 men inside. That's surveillance. How do we get past them? We don't. We go in the front, regular visitors, just 2 friends checking on someone. They walked through the main entrance. Evangeline's heart pounded, but nobody stopped them. Marcus was in the ICU. Diana talked their way past the nurse's station. We're family. His sister and his girlfriend, we just need 5 minutes. The nurse looked skeptical, but didn't argue. Room 312. 5 minutes. Marcus was barely recognizable. Tubes and wires connected him to machines. His skin was pale, his face gaunt, but his eyes were open, and when he saw them, relief flooded his features. Diana, he whispered. His voice was weak. And you must be Evangeline. Your kids are safe, Evangeline said immediately. Jackson and Harper are safe. Marcus's eyes closed. Tears leaked from the corners. Thank you. Thank you. They're staying with Marge Sullivan, Diana added. We've got Agent Mitchell coordinating a raid. 2 more days and this is all over. Marcus tried to speak, coughed, winced with pain. When he could breathe again, he looked at Evangeline. Take care of them, he said. Not just now. Forever. They need you. Marcus, I'm going into witness protection after this. New identity. New life. I can't take them with me. Too dangerous. They'll always be targets if they're with me. His hand reached out, found hers. But with you, they could have a normal life. A real childhood, please. Evangeline felt tears streaming down her face. I don't know if I can. Legally, I'll sign whatever papers you need. Full custody. Just promise me. Promise you'll give them the life I couldn't. It was an impossible promise. A terrifying promise. A promise that would change her entire life. But looking at Marcus's desperate face, thinking about Jackson and Harper waiting at the farmhouse, Evangeline knew there was only one answer. I promise, she said. I'll raise them. I'll love them. I'll give them everything I have. Marcus squeezed her hand. I knew you would. I saw it in your eyes that night. You're stronger than you think. A nurse appeared. Time's up. He needs rest. Diana pulled Evangeline toward the door, but at the threshold, Evangeline turned back. What you did, she said to Marcus. Gathering the evidence, standing up to them. That took real courage. Your kids should know that. Marcus managed a weak smile. Just tell them I loved them. That's all that matters. They made it back to the parking lot without incident. But as they reached Diana's truck, Evangeline saw something that made her blood run cold. A man in a leather jacket, standing by their vehicle, waiting. Diana saw him and her hand moved toward her gun. Easy, the man said, holding up his hands. Diana, it's me, Jake. Diana relaxed slightly. Jake, what are you doing here? Brick knows the kids are missing. He's got every member out looking. Someone saw you at that diner yesterday. Jake glanced around nervously. You need to get out of here, now. He's putting together a team to search every property outside the city. Your friend Marge's place is on the list. Evangeline's stomach dropped. When? Tonight. Maybe sooner. He's pulling in favors, calling in every dirty cop he knows. Diana grabbed Evangeline's arm. We need to go. Now! They drove well over the speed limit. Diana was on the phone with Mitchell demanding the raid happen today. I can't move that fast. Mitchell's voice came through the speaker. I need time. We don't have time, Diana shouted. They're coming for the kids tonight. Either we move now or they die. Silence. Then, give me your location. I'll get a team there as fast as I can, but you need to hold out until then, 2 hours minimum. We'll try. They pulled up to the farmhouse to find Marge already loading supplies. She'd heard enough to know what was coming. Where are the kids? Evangeline demanded. Upstairs packing. I told them we were going on an adventure. Marge's face was grim. We're not running, Diana said. We're making our stand here. Against how many? Marge asked. However many come. Evangeline ran upstairs. Jackson and Harper were in their room carefully putting toys into a backpack. They looked up when she entered. Miss Eva, are we in trouble? Jackson asked. She knelt in front of them, taking both their small hands. Some bad people are looking for you, but I promise I won't let them hurt you. Do you trust me? Both children nodded. Good. I need you to be very brave. Can you do that? Daddy says being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared, Harper said. Your daddy is very smart, Evangeline said, pulling them into a hug. I love you both so much. We love you too, Mommy, they said together. Downstairs, Diana was fortifying the house, locking windows, barricading doors, setting up defensive positions. You know how to shoot? Diana asked Evangeline. No. Diana handed her a shotgun anyway. Point, aim, pull trigger. It's got a kick. Don't shoot unless you have to, but don't hesitate if you need to. The weapon felt heavy and foreign. Evangeline had never held a gun before, but she'd also never imagined she'd be a mother. Things changed. Marge took up a position by a window facing the driveway. Diana covered the back. Evangeline was stationed at the stairs between the danger and the children hidden in the reinforced closet upstairs. And then they waited. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. They're coming, Diana said quietly. I can hear bikes. Evangeline's hands tightened on the shotgun. Her whole body trembled, but she forced herself to stay in position. She thought about Jackson and Harper upstairs, about the promise she'd made, about the life she wanted to give them. She thought about Marcus lying in a hospital bed, trusting her with his most precious treasures. She thought about her own childhood, the fear and loneliness and the desperate wish for someone to choose her to fight for her. And she knew with absolute certainty that she would not let these children down. Whatever came through that door, they would have to go through her first. The sound of motorcycles grew louder, closer. Evangeline checked the shotgun one more time. Then she settled into position and waited for the storm, because she'd made a promise, an iron promise, and iron didn't break. The first motorcycle appeared at the end of the driveway, then another, and another. In the fading light, Evangeline counted at least 10 bikes. Too many. Way too many. Mitchell, where are you? Diana hissed into her phone. 10 minutes out, came the response. Hold on, just hold on. 10 minutes might as well have been 10 hours. The motorcycles stopped at the edge of the property, engines rumbling like thunder. Men dismounted, all wearing leather jackets, all carrying cold expressions. And at the front was a man who could only be brick. He was massive, 6'4", with arms like tree trunks. He walked toward the house with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a battle. Diana positioned herself at the window. Brick, she called out. Turn around, nobody needs to get hurt. Brick laughed. The sound echoed across the property. Diana, should have known you'd be here. Always did have a soft spot for lost causes. These children aren't a cause, they're innocent kids. They're leverage. Marcus talks, they live. He stays quiet, they live. Simple business. Marcus already talked, Diana shouted back. He gave the FBI everything. You've already lost Brick. Brick's expression darkened. Then I guess we've got nothing to lose. He raised his hand, and the men behind him raised weapons. Last chance, Diana, send out the kids and the woman. Diana looked at Evangeline. "Get ready." Evangeline's heart pounded. She thought about running, taking the kids out a back window. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere these children would be safe as long as Brick and his network remained in power. The only way forward was through. Diana fired first. The shot shattered the silence and suddenly the world exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from both sides, windows shattered, wood splintered, the house filled with the smell of gunpowder and fear. Evangeline stayed at the stairs, her shotgun raised, every muscle tensed. A man burst through the back door and Marge's rifle barked. He went down. Another came through a window. Diana's shots drove him back. But there were too many men with too many guns. A biker made it to the stairs. Evangeline saw him coming, saw the gun in his hand, saw the cold calculation in his eyes. She raised the shotgun. Her hands shook. The man pointed his gun at her. Time seemed to slow. Evangeline thought about Jackson and Harper upstairs, about the promise she'd made. She pulled the trigger. The shotgun kicked hard, slamming into her shoulder. The blast was deafening. The man fell. Evangeline stared at what she'd done, frozen in shock. She'd never hurt anyone before, but she'd do it again. Would do whatever it took to protect those children. More men poured into the house. Diana was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but still fighting. Marge was out of ammunition and swinging her empty rifle like a club. They were losing. Then cutting through the gunfire and chaos, Evangeline heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. Lots of them. "Federal agents, drop your weapons. Drop them now." The house was suddenly flooded with men and women in FBI tactical gear. Real FBI, clean FBI, Mitchell's team. The bikers tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Within minutes, they were all in custody, including Brick, who stood with his hands cuffed behind his back, his face twisted with rage. Mitchell appeared in the doorway, surveying the carnage. Her eyes found Evangeline still standing at the stairs, still holding the shotgun. "You okay?" Mitchell asked. Evangeline couldn't speak, couldn't move. Then she heard it. A small voice from upstairs. "Mommy, is it safe?" The shotgun clattered to the floor. Evangeline ran up the stairs, threw open the closet door, and gathered Jackson and Harper into her arms. They were whole. They were safe. They were hers. "It's over," she whispered, holding them tight. "It's over, babies. You're safe now." And for the first time since that night on the dark street, Evangeline let herself believe it might actually be true. The aftermath was a blur of statements and questions and federal agents securing the scene. Mitchell coordinated everything with calm efficiency. Jackson and Harper wouldn't leave Evangeline's side. They clung to her like she was their only anchor in a world that had gone mad. Maybe she was. As the sun rose on a new day, Mitchell pulled Evangeline aside. "We got them," she said. "All of them. The raid on Marcus's house turned up enough evidence to charge 47 people. Cops, politicians, judges. It's going to take years to sort through all of it. But the network is broken. And Marcus, safe, in protective custody until the trials, then witness protection like he said." Evangeline looked at Jackson and Harper, who were sleeping on the couch, exhausted from terror and relief. "He wants me to have custody, full custody. He's signing over his parental rights." Mitchell studied her. "You sure you know what you're getting into, raising two kids who've been through trauma? It's not going to be easy." "Nothing worth doing ever is," Evangeline said. A small smile crossed Mitchell's face. "No, I suppose not." She handed Evangeline a card. "That's my direct number. You need anything, legal help, counseling for the kids, whatever you call me. Marcus Dalton did something incredibly brave. The least I can do is make sure his kids are taken care of." "Thank you." Mitchell turned to leave, then paused. "You know, in all my years with the FBI, I've never seen anything quite like what you did. You had every reason to walk away, every excuse, but you didn't. You kept your promise. That's rare." She pulled out an envelope from her jacket. "Marcus wanted you to have this, said not to open it until after everything was settled." After Mitchell left, Evangeline sat beside the sleeping children. She stroked Harper's blonde curls, straightened Jackson's shirt, marveled at the perfect innocence of their sleeping faces. 6 days ago, she'd been nobody. A delivery driver living paycheck to paycheck, drifting through life without purpose or connection. Now she was a mother, a guardian, someone worth depending on. It terrified her, but it also filled her with something she'd never felt before: purpose, meaning, love. She looked at the envelope Mitchell had given her. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a letter in Marcus's handwriting and a photograph. The photo showed Marcus and a beautiful woman on their wedding day, young and hopeful. On the back, written in pen, Isabella and Marcus Dalton, wedding day, May 15th. The letter read, "To whoever keeps my promise when I couldn't. If you're reading this, I'm either dead or gone forever into witness protection. Either way, I'll never get to thank you in person for what you've done for my children. I saw something in your face that night. I saw someone who understood what it meant to need saving. Someone who knew what it felt like to be alone. Someone who would fight for kids who had no one else. I was right. Thank you for stopping when everyone else would have driven past. Thank you for keeping your word when it would have been easier to break it. Thank you for loving my children when they needed it most. Jackson and Harper are everything good left in this world. They're the reason I tried to make things right. The reason I stood up to evil when it would have been easier to look away. Now they're your reason, your purpose, your family. I know you probably don't feel ready. I know you're probably terrified. But you're exactly what they need. Not someone perfect. Not someone who has it all figured out. Just someone who shows up. Someone who stays. Someone who loves fiercely and protects fearlessly. That's you. Tell them their daddy loved them more than anything. Tell them I'm sorry I couldn't be there to watch them grow up. Tell them to be brave, to be kind, to be better than I was. And tell them that the woman who stopped on a dark street and saved their lives is the bravest person I ever met. You are the answer to a prayer I didn't know how to say. Thank you, Marcus. Evangeline's tears fell onto the letter, smudging the ink. She held it to her chest, overwhelmed by the weight of trust this man had placed in her. She would not let him down. She would not let Jackson and Harper down. She would not let herself down. This was her life now, her purpose, her family, and she would fight for it with everything she had. Epilogue. 6 months later. The courthouse steps were warm under the autumn sun. Evangeline stood with Jackson and Harper, both dressed in their best clothes, holding the official adoption papers that made everything legal, everything real. Judge Richardson had been kind, had listened to Evangeline's story, had seen the way Jackson and Harper clung to her, had heard their small voices say, "That's our mommy," with absolute certainty. And she'd granted the adoption. Jackson Dalton Hart, Harper Dalton Hart. Their new names felt right, a bridge between the father who'd given them life and the mother who'd chosen them. Marcus had signed the papers from witness protection. Agent Mitchell had delivered them personally, along with another letter for the kids that Evangeline would save until they were older. A letter explaining why their daddy had to go away, why he'd trusted Evangeline, why love sometimes meant letting go. Diana had come to the ceremony, clean for 6 months now, working as a mechanic in Oregon, building a life that her sister would have been proud of. She'd hugged Evangeline tight and whispered, "You did it. You kept the promise." Marge had been there too, beaming like a proud grandmother, already planning the celebration dinner at the farmhouse. Now standing in the fading light, Evangeline took a photo with the twins. The official family photo. The one that would hang in their new apartment, the bigger one she'd been able to afford with help from a victims' compensation fund and Mitchell's connections. "Mommy, can we get ice cream?" Harper asked, tugging on Evangeline's hand. "Yeah, ice cream," Jackson echoed. Evangeline looked down at them. 6 months ago, they'd been traumatized children who'd watched their father nearly die. Now they were kids who laughed, who played, who were slowly healing. "Ice cream sounds perfect," Evangeline said. As they walked down the courthouse steps hand in hand, Evangeline felt the weight of Marcus's letter in her pocket. She carried it with her always, a reminder of the promise that had changed everything. She'd been just a delivery driver making one last stop. But that stop had delivered more than a package. It had delivered a purpose, a family, a home, and she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. 5 years later, the backyard of the small house on Maple Street was filled with the sound of children playing. 8-year-old Jackson pushed Harper on the swing set while their friends from school played tag around the oak tree. Evangeline watched from the porch, one hand resting on her growing belly. 6 months pregnant with a baby girl she'd already named Isabella after the woman whose children she'd been trusted to raise. Her husband Daniel appeared beside her with 2 glasses of lemonade. He was a teacher, patient and kind, who'd fallen in love with Evangeline and the twins 2 years ago and never looked back. "Thinking about that night?" Daniel asked softly. He knew the story, all of it. "Always," Evangeline admitted. "Sometimes I still can't believe it really happened." "You saved them." "They saved me," Evangeline corrected. "I was nobody before them. Just drifting. No purpose. No family." Diana's car pulled up to the curb. She visited twice a year now, always bringing presents, always making the twins laugh with carefully edited stories about their father. "Aunt Diana!" Jackson and Harper shrieked, running toward her. Diana caught them both in a hug, lifting them off their feet despite their growing size. She looked good, healthy, happy. That evening after dinner, after the kids were in bed, the adults sat on the porch under the stars. "I heard from Mitchell," Diana said quietly. "Marcus is doing well. New name, new city. He's working construction, building houses. Says it feels right, creating instead of destroying." "Does he ever ask about them?" Evangeline asked. "Every time, but he knows this is better, knows they're safer, happier with you." Diana smiled. "He was right about you. That night he told me later he knew you'd stop. Said he saw something in your face. Someone who understood what it meant to need saving." Evangeline thought back to that dark street, to the moment she'd decided to pull over instead of driving past. "I was just a delivery driver," she said. "You were never just anything," Daniel said, taking her hand. Later in the quiet of their bedroom, Evangeline stood at the window watching the street where it had all begun. The house they lived in now was 3 blocks from 1247 Maple Street. She'd chosen it deliberately, a reminder, a memorial, a celebration. Jackson appeared in the doorway clutching his old teddy bear. The recorder was long gone, but the bear remained. "Can't sleep?" Evangeline asked. "Had a dream about Daddy," Jackson said. At 8, his memories of Marcus were fading, becoming more feeling than fact. He was smiling, said he was proud of us. Evangeline gathered him into her arms. "He is proud of you, so proud, and he loves you so much. Do you think we'll ever see him again?" The question hurt, but Evangeline had promised herself she'd never lie to these children. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday when you're grown. But even if you don't, he's always with you. In here." She touched his chest over his heart. "Everything good about you, everything brave, everything kind, that's from him." Jackson thought about this. "And from you too. You're brave. You kept us safe." "We kept each other safe," Evangeline said. "That's what families do." She tucked him back into bed, kissed his forehead, and returned to her own room where Daniel was already asleep. As she lay in the darkness, one hand on her pregnant belly, Evangeline thought about the impossible journey that had brought her here. From nobody to mother, from delivery driver to guardian, from someone who'd never been chosen to someone who'd been trusted with the most precious responsibility imaginable. The baby kicked and Evangeline smiled. She'd kept her iron promise, and in keeping it she'd found everything she'd never known she needed. A family, a purpose, a home. The next morning, Evangeline woke to the smell of pancakes. Harper was helping Daniel in the kitchen, carefully pouring batter while Jackson set the table with the solemnity of someone given an important task. "Morning, Mommy," Harper called out. At 8, she was all blonde curls and boundless energy, the trauma of her early years visible only in the moments when she held tight to Evangeline's hand. in crowds, or checked 3 times that doors were locked at night. "Morning, baby," Evangeline said, kissing the top of her head. This was her life now. Pancake mornings and school pickups and bedtime stories and scraped knees and parent-teacher conferences and everything ordinary and extraordinary about raising children. It wasn't easy. Some days she still felt like she was faking it, like someone would discover she had no idea what she was doing. But then Jackson would bring home a drawing he'd made of their family stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun, and Harper would fall asleep with her head on Evangeline's lap during movie night, and Daniel would tell her she was the strongest person he'd ever known, and Evangeline would remember. She'd made a promise on a dark street to a dying man, an iron promise, and iron doesn't break, not when it's forged in love, not when it's tempered by courage, not when it's the foundation everything else is built upon. That afternoon, while the kids were at school, Evangeline drove to 1247 Maple Street. She did this once a year on the anniversary, parked in the same spot where her car had been that night, stood on the same sidewalk where Marcus had lain bleeding. The street looked different in daylight, peaceful, ordinary. No one would ever guess what had happened here 5 years ago. But Evangeline remembered, would always remember. She closed her eyes and whispered into the wind, "I kept my promise, Marcus. Your kids are safe. They're loved. They're home." A gust of wind rustled the leaves in the oak trees, and for just a moment, Evangeline could have sworn she felt something like gratitude in the air. She placed a single white rose on the spot where she'd found him, then got back in her car. As she drove away heading back to her family, Evangeline looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The tired, lonely woman from 5 years ago was gone. In her place was a mother, a wife, a woman who'd found her purpose in the most unexpected way. Evangeline Hart had been nobody. Now she was somebody's everything. And that made all the difference.